I broke up with my boyfriend. Sitting in my husband's car. I didn't dare to show any emotion and didn't dare to cry out loud. In the past. I didn't dare to tell my parents when I was in a relationship. Now. I don't dare to tell my husband when I'm in a relationship. All my life. It's all regret. Julian chased me for more than a year before I agreed to be his girlfriend. His cooking is really good and very to my taste. After eating, I rested on the sofa and watched Julian busy in the kitchen with an apron tied around his waist. Suddenly I had an impulse. Julian, shall we get married? Julian turned his head and glanced at me. Isn't your marriage proposal a bit too simple? I smiled and didn't say anything. After the meal, I found a whole acrylic wall in his house, displaying out-of-print models and many trophies of considerable weight. In the middle position, there is a paper crane protected by a glass cover. The paper crane is pink and not folded very well, but it is placed in the most prominent position on this display wall, which is enough to see Julian's degree of cherishing it. I said casually, this paper crane is folded very well. Julian took a look at the paper crane. Really? I think it's folded very ugly. If it's ugly, why do you still keep it here like a treasure? He shrugged. No way. It was given by the girl I like. No matter how ugly it is, I still like it. The smile on my face suddenly froze. I turned my head and looked at the paper crane for a long time, still unable to remember when I gave it to him. Suddenly I felt a burst of guilt. Julian noticed my emotion. He hooked my waist and held me in his arms. Serafoni, I know what you are thinking, but I always think that liking you is just my own business. It has nothing to do with you, so you don't have to feel guilty for not responding to my liking in the past. Besides, for me at that time, just secretly liking you was already very satisfying for me. I put my arms around his waist and buried my face in his chest. Julian, can you tell me when I gave you this paper crane? Julian's face was filled with a soft smile. He was recalling, at that time, you had just learned to fold paper cranes. After folding it, you excitedly showed it to your desk mate. As a result, she said that you folded it very ugly. You were very angry. So you asked other classmates nearby. They all said that you didn't fold it well. But I secretly took a look at that paper crane. I think you folded it extremely well. That is the most perfect paper crane I have ever seen. So when you came to me with it, I was both surprised and delighted. Blushing, I kept saying that it was really well folded. You were so happy and then gave me the first paper crane you folded. This little thing from my student days has long been forgotten by me. Only Julian will carefully cherish these details about me. Julian lowered his head and kissed my eyes. Serafini, 16 years ago you gave me a pink paper crane. Now I give you a blue one. I felt something being stuffed into my hand by him. I looked down and sure enough, it was a blue paper crane. It is just countless times more beautiful than the one I gave him before. Thank you. Julian curved his lips. You're welcome. Not only thank you for giving me a paper crane, but also thank you for liking me. On the weekend night, we went to watch a movie. It was very late when the movie ended. When Julian sent me home, we met an uninvited guest at the door. I haven't seen Jonathan for a long time. He seems to have changed a lot. At this time, it is also different from the hysteria when I talked about divorce with him before. He has aged a lot. His face is haggard, and there is a circle of dark stubble around his lips. When Jonathan saw me and Julian holding hands, he was abnormally calm. I have heard that many major things have happened in Jonathan's family after he divorced me. Jonathan's mother also divorced Jonathan's father. Jonathan's father didn't dare to make trouble with his ex-wife. He could only lose his temper with Jonathan at home. He blamed Jonathan for not being able to handle women well. I have spent so many years with your mother. Now Serafini divorces you. And your mother wants to divorce me. You useless thing can't even handle a woman well. Coupled with the sharp drop in the stock price of Jonathan's family company and continuous internal problems, Jonathan should have had a very difficult time recently. Serafini, can we talk? For the first time, I saw this cramped expression on Jonathan's face. Perhaps seeing my refusal, he immediately said, "It will be very quick. Just a few words. It won't take up too much of your time." I frowned and was not willing to pay attention to him in my heart. There should be nothing to say between us. Jonathan softened his tone and pleaded, "Serafini, I'll leave after I finish speaking. Please. It is already late at night. Plus, if he really makes a fuss, it will be embarrassing for me." So I could only say impatiently, "You say it." But Jonathan didn't say anything. He looked at Julian. "Can Mr. Julian, could you give us some privacy?" I gave him a sharp look. And Jonathan immediately changed his words. "I have something to say to Serafini." Julian frowned, didn't speak, and didn't leave, knowing that he must be uncomfortable again. I turned my head and was about to say something. Julian spoke first. "I also have something to tell you. Serafini, I'll go in and wait for you. Call me if you need anything." Seeing Julian preparing to enter the house, Jonathan's face showed a painful expression. He asked me, "Are you living together?" Julian gave him a cold look and said, "We are in a legitimate relationship. Isn't living together normal for boyfriend and girlfriend?" Mr. Jonathan, there's no need to be surprised. I suppressed a smile and watched Julian walk to the door. He found the key in my bag to open the door, and then turned on the light and entered the house as if he was familiar with it. Serafini, hearing Jonathan call me, I only then looked back at him. "If you have something to say it quickly. Regarding the child, I'm sorry. I really didn't know you were pregnant at that time. Serafini, I'm really sorry." He looked at me, and 2 lines of tears slid down his face. Jonathan cried, but there was not a single ripple in my heart. "Don't mention the past. If you came here specially to apologize to me, it's really unnecessary. I don't need your apology either." Seeing that I was about to leave, Jonathan suddenly became impatient. "Serafini, can you give me another chance? For the sake of our past relationship, give me another chance. Okay? I really know I was wrong. I love you. We grew up together. How could there be no feelings? I was just confused before." I sneered. "Jonathan, what relationship do you think we still have? Now the Jonathan family is in a precarious situation. It's already very kind of me, Serafini, to not take advantage of the situation. I'm like a living Bodhisattva incarnated. So don't talk to me about any relationship. Isn't your purpose in coming to see me tonight to hope that I can help the Jonathan family? I can tell you clearly that it's impossible." Jonathan closed his eyes in despair and then opened them again. "Serafini, I didn't expect you to help the Jonathan family when I came here today. I know I was bad before and I'm sorry to you. I came here today just for myself. For our past relationship. Please give me a chance. Okay? I don't ask you to remarry me immediately. I can pursue you again. We can fall in love again, and get married again. Can we start all over?" I shook my head. "No. Jonathan, can you stop daydreaming? Now that we're divorced, don't disturb me anymore. Be a qualified ex-husband and disappear from my world." After saying these, my patience was exhausted. I know too well what kind of person Jonathan is. In his heart, there is only interest and no feelings. Before, he was reluctant to divorce me because of interests even though he was tired of me. Now that we're divorced, he pretends to ask for my forgiveness. But no one is stupid. No one will fall into the same pit twice. After entering the house, I saw Julian sitting on the sofa. Hearing the sound of me coming in, he looked up at me and said, "Finished talking?" I nodded. After changing my shoes, I stood 1 step away from Julian and looked at him with ease. "Why did you say we were living together just now?" Julian is extremely proper. It's been so long since I got divorced. With him, we have only reached the step of kissing. Even when we kiss, Julian will blush and be shy. Sometimes when I kiss him initiative. When looking into his eyes, I could see the lust in his eyes. He stroked my earlobe, looking at me almost greedily. Just when I thought he wouldn't leave this time, Julian once again refused. Not yet. Why? Julian didn't answer. He just held me tighter. I could clearly feel the changes in his body. But even so, he still had to refuse me. Darling, go take a bath. I'll leave after you fall asleep. Julian's voice was also a little hoarse. I looked at him sullenly for a while and didn't urge me to stay anymore. I just got up from him in annoyance. Obviously, I clearly refused Jonathan last night. But when I arrived at the company the next morning, there was still a bouquet of roses sent by him in my office. When I first started dating Jonathan, he gave me this kind of flower. He said it was only for me. He would only give it to me in his life. But later, he not only gave the flowers to the women he kept outside, but also said the words he had said to me back then to others verbatim. Yuki, throw it out. From now on, this kind of thing must not appear in my office again. The assistant immediately came in and took the flowers away. Because of that unlucky bouquet of roses, I was in a bad mood all day. Every day after work. As long as Julian is in Shanghai, he will come to pick me up and have a meal together. Today is no exception. Compared with usual, he even came early today. I used to wait for me downstairs. Why did you come up today? I asked him with a smile. Julian put the paper bag in his hand in front of me. I brought some gifts for you and the people in your company. In the paper bag is a luxury brand perfume under his company. Everyone in the company received a copy. Now the employees are even more familiar with him than with me. The boss. I leaned on the chair and brought the perfume to the tip of my nose and smelled it. I couldn't help but tease. General Manager Julian is really generous today. Julian looked at me and smiled. Just a trick to please my girlfriend. He was still holding a pot of mock orange. Seeing me looking, Julian put the mock orange potted plant on my desk. This man really understands romance in his bones. I receive flowers from him every day. Flowers of various varieties. Almost never the same. I used to think he might be more playful. Later, after meeting his parents, I realized that his father is also like this. He sends flowers to his lover consistently for 10 years. Sometimes heredity and the words and deeds of parents are really important. Mock orange? Yes. The flower language of mock orange is I am your captive. The corners of my mouth couldn't help but rise. I was in a good mood today. So I left work early. In the elevator, Julian asked me, "What do you want to eat today?" "Anything. You decide." Julian lowered his eyes and smiled. His eyes reflected my figure. The excellent mood was instantly gone the moment I saw Jonathan downstairs. He is really haunting. At this moment, I suddenly understood why Julian came early today. Serafini. When he saw me, Jonathan immediately approached me. Julian sneered and said, "What? Didn't you finish talking last night?" When looking at me again, the coldness on Julian's face had disappeared. He looked dejected and was so sad that tears were about to overflow. "You talk to Mr. Jonathan. I'll wait for you in the car." I held his hand. "No need. I have nothing to talk about with him." Julian held my hand back and raised his eyebrows and glanced at Jonathan. "Julian, we are all men. There is no need to play this set." I frowned unpleasantly. "Jonathan," I said, "don't bother me anymore." Jonathan seemed to have returned to his previous state. He didn't know what he was angry about. "Serafini, can't you see that Julian is deliberately doing this? He is a green tea. I don't believe you can't see such an obvious means." I sneered. "Don't I know if he is green tea? But you, which of the women you kept outside before wasn't green tea? You couldn't see it at all back then. But now you come to me and slander Julian." "Jonathan," I said, "we are over. Don't do self-defeating things anymore." Before coming, Julian only said that he had booked a place. But when we arrived, I realized it was a private booking. There was only our table of guests in the restaurant. Suddenly there was a guess in my mind. And even my heart beat to beats faster. Is Julian planning to propose to me tonight? When the melodious piano sound rang, the lights in the restaurant suddenly dimmed a few degrees. The waiter pushed a trolley towards us. Proposal cake. I was reveling inside. But then I heard Julian's clear spring-like voice say, Serafini, happy birthday. At this time, I noticed that the piano was playing the happy birthday song. Right? I've been so busy these days that I forgot it's my birthday today. I looked at Julian and said in a daze. Julian gave me the birthday gift. It was a square velvet box. Inside was a gemstone necklace. Very familiar. I remembered seeing it at an auction when I went abroad with Julian before. I liked it very much at that time. So I took a few more glances. I originally wanted to bid for it. But later this necklace was called for a sky price. I thought it wasn't necessary. So I gave up. I just didn't expect that after a year. It returned to my hands again. I saw it at the auction before and thought it was very suitable for you. So later I asked the buyer to transfer it to me. Do you like it? I nodded, yes. Julian's eyes and eyebrows were smiling. And there was a very faint blush on his face. Well, even when he spoke, his ending sound rose unconsciously. As long as you like it. You should also like the cake. I took a small bite. The taste was very familiar. We ate their cake in the UK before. Well, his pastry chef is in the country during this time. So I asked him to make it. How could there be such a coincidence? It's just that someone carefully prepared it on purpose. Julian, I am so happy tonight. After dinner, Julian took me to the top floor hotel again. The room was covered with flowers and balloons. Sitting in front of the floor-to-ceiling window of the hotel room, you can overlook the night view of the entire Shanghai. It was almost early morning at this time. The city of Shanghai was still brightly lit, magnificent and bustling with traffic. When the midnight bell rang, I was already a little sleepy. When I was dozing off on Julian's shoulder, I suddenly heard Julian say out of nowhere, "It's 12 o'clock." I was about to tell him that I was sleepy. In the next moment, I saw fireworks rising in the Bund. A huge pink heart bloomed in the sky. One cluster after another. Serafini, did you bring the paper crane I gave you before? Yes. I didn't think much about why he suddenly asked me about the paper crane at this moment. After finding it from my bag, I gave it to him. At this time, Julian didn't know where he took out a transparent glass box, filled with blue paper cranes. I'll exchange this in the box for the one in your hand. I nodded in a daze and agreed. Looking at Julian unpacking the paper crane he gave me in front of me, I actually already had the answer in my heart. Sure enough, there was a ring hidden inside. This was custom made by me the day after you texted me and said you wanted a divorce. He put the ring on my hand. Then looking into my eyes, he asked me piously, Serafini, will you marry me? Tears suddenly gushed. I kept nodding, yes, I do. We kissed on a night filled with magnificent fireworks. When I got tired from kissing, I leaned on his chest to rest. I said, during the meal, I thought you would propose to me then. No. It wasn't past 12 o'clock at that time. Taking out my phone, I looked at the calendar. Today is ordinary and not a special day. Then why does it have to be today? Because yesterday was your birthday. Today is the commemoration of my proposal to you. In the future, I can give you a gift on your birthday every year and another gift on the anniversary of our proposal. So you will be happy twice. And the paper crane in the box. Remember to open it and take a look. I was curious. Is there something inside? Julian rested his forehead against mine. His voice soft and gentle. Inside are 7,123 love letters I wrote to Serafini. How long did it take to write? I looked up and asked him. I don't know. Whenever I missed you before, I would write a love letter to you. The parents of both families sat together to discuss our wedding date. My mom said, "Getting married is quite complicated, and there are many things to prepare. It's better to set it for next year. There will be plenty of time for preparation. After all, it's a major event in marriage, and we can't be careless." I was about to speak, when Julian squeezed my hand under the table. "Ganti, I prepared everything for the wedding a year ago." He was extremely respectful and polite in front of the elders. "This is the list. Please take a look and see what's missing. I'll go and prepare it again." I was a little surprised. Julian had never told me about this before. After my parents looked at the list, they nodded in satisfaction. Especially my dad, who praised Julian endlessly. Finally, at Julian's strong request, our wedding date was set for 2 months later. "Why so soon?" Julian looked at me, a smile on his lips. "Because I can't wait to have a title." I asked again, "When did you start preparing?" "I didn't know. When I ordered the ring. I prepared it along the way." He looked at me. "Anyway, I will definitely marry you." In the evening, my mom specially called me home. "Serafini, have you thought it through about getting married to Julian?" I nodded. "Yes. I have thought it through." Julian's long-prepared wedding lived up to everyone's expectations. The wedding was grand and almost caused a sensation throughout the entire city of Shanghai. Everything went smoothly at the wedding, until the vows were finished. The master of ceremonies said, "The groom can kiss the bride." When Julian kissed me, unsurprisingly, he cried again. He is really a crybaby. When Julian came in at night, I was browsing the web. Seeing me looking at my phone, fully absorbed, Julian couldn't help being curious. "What are you looking at?" I looked up at him, my expression somewhat complicated. "Julian, don't worry. We are already married. No matter what, I will not despise you." "Julian?" He snatched my phone and flipped to the webpage I was browsing just now. Shang XX. If you are fat during adolescence. Not a yellow flower. If you are fat during adolescence. Generally speaking, it's very small, and makes one think. Meow meow meow. Being fat during adolescence is not okay. Watermelon. Being fat during adolescence. Will it not grow up? After Julian read it, he understood instantly. He looked up at me and said through gritted teeth, So I can't be blamed for suspecting." On the night Julian proposed, I thought everything had come naturally. Unexpectedly, in the face of me using all means, Julian could still remain unmoved. So I have reason to suspect that he is not capable. I laughed awkwardly, trying my best to cover up my embarrassment. "Julian, think from another perspective. You see, I clearly know that you may not be capable, but I still willingly marry you. Doesn't this indirectly show that I really love you?" Suddenly, a lights in the room went out. I was pounced on the bed by Julian. His extremely dangerous voice came from beside my ear. "Serafini, whether I am capable or not, we'll find out tonight." It's hard to describe what happened that whole night, but what netizens said is not entirely right. No, it's completely wrong. Julian is an exception. He asked me over and over again by my ear. My throat was hoarse from crying, and I still had to answer him over and over again. A few days later, when my best friend came to my house and talked about what happened on my wedding day. "Do you know? On your wedding day, I was afraid that Jonathan would come and cause trouble. So I specifically brought people to guard outside the auditorium. As a result, he had a car accident on his way that day." I hadn't heard about this before. "Is it serious?" My best friend nodded. The female driver who hit him was his assistant before and was later fired. So she took revenge on him. Now his legs have been amputated, and he will never be able to stand up for the rest of his life. Do you think this is retribution? Who would have thought that Jonathan would finally fall into the hands of the woman he played with? And his father. After knowing that Jonathan was amputated, he had a stroke and was admitted to the hospital. Now both father and son are lying in the hospital. The company of Jonathan's family is almost being divided up by the people on the board of directors. Now Jonathan's family is completely finished. It was several months later when we returned to Shanghai after our honeymoon. In the evening, on the way home after taking a walk with Julian, I suddenly heard a meow. I don't know if I'm too sensitive. That meow was very similar to the kitten I used to raise. When I looked over following the sound, the kitten sitting in the bushes was also looking at me intently. It didn't look similar to my previous kitten at all. My kitten had long died. I knew I had misheard. But still, disappointment was inevitable. "What's wrong?" Julian standing beside me asked me. I shook my head. When I was about to leave, the kitten suddenly jumped out of the bushes. It was afraid that I would leave. Blocking at my feet. It kept me whining at me as if it was saying something to me. Julian squeezed my hand. "It seems to know you." "Yes. It seems to know me. It's as if my kitten has come back to find me in a new body." "Julian, I want to take it home." "Sure. Then take it home." After saying that, Julian took off his coat, bent down and picked up the kitten. Julian's perspective: the first time I met Serafini was in the first year of junior high school. At that time, I was really in a bit of a mess. Less than 1.4 meters tall. Slightly plump. I was the kind of person who was the least noticeable in the class. But Serafini was like a little princess. She was beautiful, smart, and had good grades. Not only did the teacher like her, but everyone in our class, the neighboring class, and everyone seemed to like her. Of course, I liked her too. I liked her at first sight. Because when others made fun of my height and called me little potato, Serafini would seriously tell them, "In fact, you are not much taller than him. You are not even as tall as me. If you call him little potato, then what are you? Are you a big potato?" At this time, those people would say, "It's just a joke. A joke is only a joke when both parties find it funny." Serafini pointed at me. "Do you think he looks like he finds it funny? You're bullying people. If you bully him again, I'll tell the teacher." Oh my God. She is really a kind girl. I was extremely happy at that time. But I didn't dare to look at her. I only dared to take a peek at her when she had her back to me. Just one glance could make me happy for a long time. That day when I went home, I told my parents that I had made a friend. She is my best friend. But the next day when I met her on the road and wanted to greet her, I realized that Serafini didn't seem to remember me at all. She didn't know my name either, even though I told her in a low voice with a blushing face yesterday. Later, when the seats in the class were changed, I would always choose the seat behind Serafini. This was the case for all 3 years of junior high school. But Serafini still didn't remember me. She had so many friends. The girls in our class, girls from other classes, and even girls from other schools were all her friends. She also had a best friend named Jonathan. I heard that the two of them were childhood sweethearts and grew up together. In high school, I successfully got into the same school as her. Fortunately, we were still classmates. Even more fortunately, I was still sitting behind her as in junior high school. I thought we would be classmates for another 3 years. 3 years after 3 years. Julian's name would be remembered by Serafini one day. But more and more people liked Serafini in high school. They wrote love letters to Serafini and confessed to her in public. That night when I went back, I also wrote a love letter to Serafini. But I knew that I might never have the chance to give this love letter to her. Serafini was too dazzling. She was shining brightly while I was like a mouse in the gutter, always only able to secretly like her. Today, someone came to confess to Serafini again. But Serafini refused him. "Sorry, classmate. We are students now. The top priority is to study hard." That person didn't say anything on the surface. But after school, I heard him say to others, "Serafini? I don't even look up to her." Today's confession was just to tease her. Although she seems aloof on the surface, Who knows how many people have played with her secretly. By the way, I heard before that she also seduced senior boys. Do you know? I was never a person who liked to cause trouble. In the past, when others bullied me, I always thought about enduring it and letting it go. But this time I couldn't endure it. What reacted before my brain was my hand. When I realized it, I had already smashed the head of the person talking with a stone. I was beaten up by him and pressed to the ground. This matter finally reached the principal. In the surveillance video, it was indeed me who hit first. So my parents chose to settle privately and finally sent me abroad. Before leaving, I gave the love letter that I had written long ago to her deskmate and asked her to help me pass it on. Life abroad was very hard. I would think of Seraphimi every day. When I missed her, I would write a love letter to her. As time went by, I wrote more and more. Later, I finally grew taller and was no longer as chubby as before. More and more girls around me had implicitly or explicitly said that they liked me. I thought maybe if Seraphimi saw me now, she would like me too? After finally being allowed to return to China, as soon as I landed, I went to Seraphimi's house immediately. I wanted to create an accidental encounter. I even rehearsed countless times in my mind what to say after meeting. But in the end, I saw Seraphimi kissing a boy in a hidden corner. Like a voyeur, I stood in the shadow a few steps away from them and eavesdropped on them planning their future that belonged only to the two of them. At that moment, I felt like I was about to die. After going abroad again, I didn't think about coming back. But when I saw the news of her getting married in the classmate group, I still couldn't help but rush back overnight. As a guest attending the wedding, I witnessed her marrying someone else. Later, I started a business in China. The company got better and better. I became her husband's partner. Her husband said that I was his best brother. His best brother. His best brother. His best brother.